absolute pleasure to introduce Pav, which is wonderful. So I've read a little bit about like Pav and what she's been studying. I think she might be one of the most well-read and widely educated people that I've met in my time over the time I've been working at OCD Action. She's I think I'm right in saying she's a trained lawyer. She's also currently training to be a psychotherapist, although I think this evening she's speaking much more from her lived experience perspective, and also importantly from her role as a co-founder of BFRB UK and Ireland, which is why she's kindly kind of agreed to speak to us this evening. She's also an amazing mental health advocate and runs a support group, which brings huge amounts of experience to us this evening. She also wonderfully is a really dedicated member of OCD Action's EDI panel, and I don't know if anybody saw Pav speak at OCD Action's conference, but I think when she spoke there, she was full of warmth and wisdom, and so I'm very sure that we are all in for a really wonderful experience. So maybe if we reflect that warmth now and really lean in, even though she can't see us, and welcome her with the same level of warmth as what I know Pav will bring. So thank you ever so much, Pav, and I'm really looking forward to hear you speak.
Thanks, Lee. That's so kind of you. And thanks OCD Action for giving this platform so that we can talk about BFRBs, which is a really sort of misunderstood topic. And I'm really grateful to have the opportunity to present to you guys. So yeah, every day I get inquiries from parents, from people suffering with BFRBs. There's lots of questions around this topic of like, what is it? What can I do about it? How can I help my children? How can I help my loved ones? And where can I get help and treatment? So the aim of this presentation really is to kind of answer some questions, demystify the topic as best as I can. So if we have a look at the agenda, which is on the next slide, I'll talk you through the things that we will be going through today. So we're going to look at classification, prevalence rates and possible causes. We're going to look at what are BFRBs and what the impact is, what signs and symptoms do they present as, and we're going to really quickly look at a CBT-based approach to treatment, which is one of many different types of modalities that we can look at when we're looking at managing our BFRB. There are others, and I tend to adopt an integrative approach. And also we'll look at like cultural and diversity issues, which are really, really important because we want to be looking at ourselves and people as an individual as a whole, not just kind of like what our BFRB is and what the symptoms are, but the whole environment that we live in, the people that we're with, our culture, how we grew up, and how it's impacted us in our BFRB. And then there'll be some resources and signposting at the end, and then a Q&A. So yeah, if we go to the next slide, that would be great. Thank you. So what are BFRBs? So here are the most common ones: hair pulling, skin picking, nail biting, nose picking, compulsive biting of the inside of the cheek, chewing and eating hair. But there are others. So I have seen some people have come to me with like playing with their hair, like playing with split ends, or like cutting their hair, which they do to you know, it's about severity at the end of the day, because we all pick or pull a little bit. We all might bite our nails a little bit. We all might, you know, pick areas of our body a little bit, but it's about the severity and to kind of get that diagnosis of having a BFRB, we want to ask ourselves, have our lives become unmanageable? Has it impacted our lives? Is it interfering in our daily life, like going to school, going to work, impacting our relationships with others and with ourselves? So it's about severity, really. I should probably also add that I actually have a BFRB, so I have TRIC. I've had it for like 30 years. And when you come to hear the lived experiences from the people from Lucy and Tash, you'll probably hear this a lot, that we've kind of tried and tested lots of different types of treatment, and actually what's worked for me is a combination of lots of different things. So we can talk more about that in a sec. So if we go to the next slide, I think we've got a little visual of what BFRBs are. So they affect different areas around the body, and yeah, this picture can be a bit triggering. So just look after yourselves, guys, because this topic is really, it's a difficult one, and it affects many people. So you may be affected by somebody who picks or pulls, by being a loved one, or you may be someone that has this. So these are the different types of BFRBs that you can have, and where they are around the body. There's a new one there around the eyes, which is, these sound quite specific, but there are people that do have this. So if you do have any of these disorders, just remember you're not alone. There's millions of people in the world that are affected by these. Okay, thanks. Can we go to the next one? Thank you. Okay, so our classification in the DSM-5, in the ICD-11, which is the European classification, is an impulse control disorder. And the DSM-5, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, it's generally what clinicians go by. Here are the criteria. So recurrent pulling of one's hair, resulting in hair loss or skin lesions from picking, repeated attempts to decrease or stop hair pulling or skin picking, that it causes clinically significant distress or impairment in social, occupational, or other important areas of functioning, so interfering with daily life. It's not attributable to other medical conditions like a dermatological condition, and it's not better explained by any other symptoms. And there's two different subtypes. So we have a automatic and a focused types of picking or pulling. And the automatic is more like a trance-like state. So some people do it in their sleep or don't realize that they're actually picking or pulling or whatever their BFRB is. And some people are quite focused and they do it with intent in order to get that spot or to get that eyelash or to get that kinky, coarse, wiry hair out. But mostly I think what you'll find, and this is me as well, is that most people do both, depending on their state of mind or depending on what's going on during the day or where they are. The onset is around 11 to 13, but you do get baby trick. Most babies do actually grow out of it, but also it can start later in life, and the prevalence is around 1 to 3 of the population. So there's a lot of people out there that are affected by this. You are not alone. Okay, next slide. Thank you. I feel like Chris Whitty during coronavirus. Okay, so causes. I don't like the word causes. I probably should have said correlations, really, because there are no direct known causes, and it's not really black and white in that sort of, this is why you do it and that's the answer. It's more a combination of things. So we're looking at things like neurobiological predisposition, like neuroscience, genetics, trauma. Trauma may be an onset of picking up or pulling. It may not be, but we don't want to dismiss anything, and we don't want to give anything a direct cause. It's more looking at all the different factors involved. They're going to be genetic. There's neuroscience to show that the brain is not functioning in the way that it should. There's also schools of thought around trying to regulate our emotions or to self-soothe, and also sensory dysregulation and trying to regulate our nervous system. So if we're like understimulated or like overstimulated, we're trying to kind of balance out our nervous system to get in the middle somewhere. And when we pick or pull, we have this kind of like release of tension, and we're trying to regulate our nervous system. Frustration and boredom is a big one, but you know, there are many different inputs into as to why we do this. Is trick just a nervous habit? So if that's answered on the next slide. It's not just a nervous habit. It exceeds the idea of like this, you know, habit that can be controlled through willpower. We can't outthink it. We can't, you know, exert willpower over it. It's much more than that. It's one of the characteristics of BFRBs is, you know, that we have tried to stop, but we can't stop. These are the common questions actually that I get are like, are they signs of emotional disturbance or trauma? And you know, the truth is that there's many people that have trauma and there's many people that haven't. And we pick or pull sometimes when we are affected by our feelings, but also we pick or pull when we are feeling happy, relaxed, and watching TV. So it's important that, you know, for example, my experience is that whenever I went to get help, or tried to get help, I kind of felt like I was kind of put in a box somewhere where, not literally, not put in a box, but kind of categorized like, okay, you do this because you have had a really difficult past, or you've had this emotional trauma, or you have, people are very quick to make that assumption, but it's really important to kind of, again, understand that this isn't just one thing, it can be many things. Yeah, and obviously there's comorbidities that come along with trick because they do, and sorry, BFRBs, because they do really impact our lives in many different ways, which we'll look at. So if we go to the impact of BFRBs, which is our next slide, we'll see that, you know, I mean, I've written this here in black and white, but it is heartbreaking. It is really difficult. It has a huge impact. I cannot stress enough the shame, the guilt, the secrecy, the isolation, the feelings of loneliness, self-worth, self-esteem, feeling unattractive, feeling defective, feeling like not being good enough, because people feel like they are the only one. They may never know that they are the only, that they think they're the only ones that do this. They think they are a freak. They think they are subhuman. They feel so much shame, and they'll go to great lengths to cover up, you know, like false eyelashes, makeup, covering up when it's like really warm, for example, because being really ashamed of showing skin. Some people will just avoid things altogether, so they just won't have boyfriends or girlfriends. They won't go into certain areas because of a certain lighting. They don't do things during summer. They don't want to be outside because it's windy. They don't want to go to like big events because, you know, somebody may be looking or might see a patch, or they might see their skin has been picked at, or they might notice something, and that's really, really, really fearful for some people. And so they just don't do any of these things, which is really, really sad. And again, you know, part of my training is to kind of be alongside people and sit with people that have so much shame, like I once did as well. You know, it's like it takes such a toll. If we go to the next slide, we'll see a visual of how, and I wonder if, Jennifer, could we zoom into that a little bit? I don't know if that's possible, but if we look here, we can see the different layers of, I think that's a bit too much, isn't it? We can see the different layers of how our BFRB has impacted us. And this is, again, this is complex because they are complex disorders, but also really shows us why it's important to look beyond the surface, why it's important to not just be having CBT for BFRBs, but also looking at our shame, looking at our guilt, looking at our self-esteem, looking at our self-worth. There's a lot of loss around loads of things, like losses around the skin that I wish that I had, the hair that I wish that I had, the person that I wish that I could have been, all the events that I wish that I was able to feel comfortable within my own skin, or the relationships that I wish that I had, or even the relationship with myself. The fact that I've had to hide, the fact that, you know, there's so much around this topic that really impacts on very different layers in many different levels. And it's really important that we look beyond the surface of, we look beyond the behavior of what we're doing, but we're also addressing these themes, because at the end of the day, these are the things that are going to make changes in order for us to navigate our lives with BFRBs and be able to live the lives we want to live. Okay, because if I'll come on to the CBT based treatment in a minute, but this was actually from a focus group that I did as part of research. And these are all the themes that came up from, it was about 15 people that were pickers and pullers. And these are all the things that they said in this group. This is how it's affected me. Okay, so next slide. If we look at the presenting signs and symptoms, there we go, thank you. So there's going to be many different, you know, it's a subjective experience. This is just some examples of when people might pick or pull. Commonly while they're reading, writing, working on a laptop computer, talking on the phone, watching TV, or falling asleep. They may do it in private, or they may do it without thinking in public. Most people hide it well. And again, there's going to be things that are specific to you or specific to your loved one, that is just your ritual and your kind of like what you do. So this is just some people, some examples. So often a person with a BFRB will delay asking for help or treatment due to shame and embarrassment, and they may believe they're the only one in the world. Okay, if there's one thing you take away from today, I just want you to know that you are not alone in this. You are not the only person in the world that picks or pulls or does some body focused repetitive behavior. There are millions of people out there every single day, many times a day, all over the world that do this. So you are not on your own. There is always something that you can do to take a step towards your recovery, whether that means joining a support group, clicking on the BFRB You and I link in the last slide, emailing me after this, emailing OCD Action after this. You have a responsibility to yourself to take action, and it's up to you. And I know that, you know, I'm being a bit preachy here, but it's so important to empower and educate yourself so that you do it for you, because there's so many people that are suffering with this. And if you've never met somebody that picks or pulls or has a form of BFRB, there's support groups out there where you can get together with people. We have a conference, BFRB You and I has a conference coming up with University of Oxford in September. Come along to that. You know, it's a good opportunity to learn more, to access help, etc. So yeah, so basically, this is not something that's just a bad habit. You can't stop on your own. You can't outthink it. There is help and treatment out there. Parents you can empower yourselves. Early intervention in children is really good. And we're going to look at the CBT-based approach, which is actually really effective in children because their brains are very malleable and they love the interventions, they love the sensory toys, etc. So yeah, if we go to the next slide, that would be great. Okay, so we're going to look at a comprehensive behavioural model, which is a CBT-based approach. I'm going to quickly go through this very quickly. It's just the beginning, so it's like the bread and butter of treatment, but there is a lot more. And I want to stress the fact that we need an integrative approach. CBT, great, it's specific, that's great. But like I said, remember the visual with the layers, the impact that this has. We want to be able to treat and look at ourselves and all the different parts of ourselves that are impacted by this, not just the actual ritual that we're doing. Okay, so if we look at the what is the comprehensive behavioural model? So I'm going to give you just a few seconds to read through this slide. Okay, I hope that was enough time. But basically, in a nutshell, this this treatment looks at the before, during, and after of our BFRB, and we're looking at like the triggers to it, which are there's 5 different modalities. There's the sensory modality, cognitive, affective, motor, and places. And we kind of break it down to see what our triggers are in each of those areas before, during, and after. So everyone will have different triggers and everyone will have a different pattern. And even though, you know, BFRBs are a classification of disorders, it's important we don't kind of categorize everyone, put them in a box, and that we look at ourselves individually and to see what's going on with ourselves. So I guess the aim is to make the unconscious conscious, or to make our habits that we're unaware of aware. And that's the first step to building on our recovery. So the slide after this is it's about the sensory modality. If we could look at that. Okay, so commonly we want to look at the 5 senses around our body. So this again is just what's come up that's really common for people with hair pullers or skin pickers. They look for certain coarse, white, textured, kinky hair that feels imperfect, hair that's out of place. Or if they're picking, they look for lumps, bumps, or rough, hard, smooth areas, imperfections, etc. And I guess, you know, the idea behind this sensory modality is to kind of become aware of that, look at ourselves, what is the experience, the sensory experience like to pick or pull, and we want to get some interventions to kind of like intervene and substitute. This kind of works well with children. You can get loads of different things. Some examples here: therapy putty, firm, medium, hard. You can get different types of therapy putty, but also kids love sensory toys anyway, but also picking stones are quite popular. There's loads of different things that you can have a look, so you can Google that. And then there's some examples of activities that you can do to kind of feed into the sensory aspect of your BFRB. The next slide is about cognitive thoughts, and this is really important. I mean, they're all important, but this modality is about the thoughts we have and our beliefs that we have around our BFRB. Permission-giving thoughts, which I kind of like to call drug dealer talk, like, okay, I'm just going to do this one, or like, oh, I'll just pick or pull a little bit, or I'll just get that one hair there, or that one eyelash, or I'll just pick this little scab here. And quite often we want to continue until we get that just right feeling, right? So again, this is the obsessive side of this, of the BFRB, is that we want to get this just right feeling, and we think we're kind of caught in this trap of like, okay, I'm just going to pick up one, but how often does it actually just stop at that one? So we want to look at those thoughts around that, thoughts around relapses, or thoughts around core beliefs like I can't stop or I'm not good enough. And we want to kind of like challenge or reframe or explore those cognitive thoughts we have. There's also cognitive distortions, which are just so common with people with BFRBs. I mean, this used to be me overthinking, over worrying, black and white thinking, catastrophic thinking, disregarding the positive, perfectionism, people pleasing, lack of boundaries, and lack of assertiveness. I mean, yeah, I don't know if that speaks to you, but it certainly speaks to me, especially the black and white thinking and the perfectionism, getting that minute detail. We want to be able to reframe and explore these thoughts like they're not always true. What's the saying? Thoughts are not fact, or don't always believe your thoughts. We might not be able to stop the thoughts, but we can look at them with a different lens. Okay, the next slide is the effective slide. So let me just do a time check. Sorry, I hope I'm not, I've got a few slides left. So the effective slide. So this is really, really important, and where, you know, we want to spend a lot of time on it. So my training, I'm training to be a psychodynamic psychotherapist, or an integrative psychotherapist, which means that you look and you utilize and implement lots of different things, not just one thing. And I guess one of the schools of thought is psychodynamic thinking. So taking the focus away from the actual BFRB now, but looking at our attachment styles, looking at our relationships with our parents, with our siblings, with ourselves, with our partners, getting in touch with our feelings, sitting with our feelings, sitting with uncomfortable feelings, distress tolerance, because at the end of the day, while we're picking or pulling, we are dissociating, we're avoiding how we're feeling, because we can get into this nice little bubble of like really concentrating on the picking and pulling, and we can get into this kind of like trance of like, you know, getting that just right one or that just right feeling. In the meantime, we don't have to think about anything that's painful. We don't have to think about the conversation or the breakup or the I don't know, whatever it is that's affecting us, that's causing us pain. So this is really, really important, and I would say one of the most important modalities is learning distress tolerance, learning to create and implement boundaries, learning to be a bit more assertive, learning to not be a people pleaser, learning to put yourself first, learning to be compassionate and kind towards yourself. Like, imagine that, you know. We're so used to picking and pulling and beating ourselves up and berating ourselves and telling ourselves we are wrong and defective. Who would have thought that we could possibly think a different way, that we could be kind to ourselves, that we could give ourselves a break, you know, the break that we really deserve. So a lot of this work is around sitting with feelings, getting in touch with feelings, putting a language to how we feel, communicating our needs. And this may all feel really strange and weird when we start doing it, but like anything, it's like a skill. And the more we can do it, the less we need to go into ourselves and internalize and get into that private space of picking or pulling or whatever our BFRB is, that's just for us, that we can do in our own private time. So I hope that makes sense. So the last two slides, if we go to the motor slide, this is, I mean, you'll have access to these slides later, but I'll quickly sum up. It's basically where we are sat within our bodies, being mindful. Where are my hands? Am I sitting on the sofa in my favorite comfy spot? Am I in bed? Where do I commonly pick or pull, like even down to kind of like the feel of the bed sheets, or my favorite pillow, or my favorite cushion. Like, what is making me, what's enabling me to make this a very comfy, secure foundation for me to have a right go with my BFRB right now? Like, am I reclining? Am I relaxed? Or is my body contorted? Where are my hands? Where are my fingers? Am I aware of them? How am I sitting? Am I slouching? So again, becoming aware of our bodies, being mindful of how our hands are placed, where we are sat. All these things can be implemented to kind of break that habit loop, or to kind of intervene in the chain of that habit loop. The next slide is places. Again, we want to look at the most common places where we do this. It could be first thing in the morning when we're getting ready. It could be in our favorite part of the sofa. It could be driving. It could be using tools. There's so many things. And actually what I do is I make people write things down. I make people write all of this down, to become aware, because you may feel like, oh, you know, Pav, I know this like the back of my hand. I've know myself, and I've done this a million times, and I know everything there is to know. But I always like to have people write down different sequences of how they pick or pull, and really strip back to the moment that you walk in the door after work, for example, and you know you're going to pull that evening. It starts from when you walk in the door. It doesn't ever start from when your hand goes up here. Your behavioral sequence has started from 100 steps before that. So when people see it written down, and when people are asked to do these modalities, and they put it all together in whichever way they want to, whether it's a visual, whether it's a spider chart, whether it's a log, whether it's however you want to do it, it brings that awareness in. Now, whether you still decide to pick or pull when you know and when you're aware, that's okay. Okay, no one is saying is that when you have all this information, that equals no picking, no pulling. It doesn't work like that. It just empowers you to be able to feel more like you know what's going on. And if you still do it, that's the time that you have to show yourself compassion and love and kindness, because at the end of the day, you're here because you have a BFRB. What is the characteristic of the BFRB? Well, it is to pick or pull, because I have a BFRB, which means that I pull my hair. So I'm going to pull my hair. Like, I know that sounds a bit weird, but you know, we need to kind of get away from personalizing the disorder. This is not about us and our personality, or us being weak or defective or wrong or any of that stuff. That's personalizing the disorder. We want to separate. It's not about us as people. It's about the fact that you have a BFRB, and that is the characteristic of it is to pick or pull. Next slide. I feel like I've taken ages. We can go straight to the next slide, actually. Just really quickly, a slide on diversity and cultural issues, which is really important. And this is my last slide. So again, I'm going to come back to the same thing. When you're trying to get treatment for this, whether it's on the NHS, whether it's a private therapist, whether it's a CBT practitioner, whether it's, I don't know, counselling, whatever, whoever, it's really, really important that, number one, if they don't know about BFRBs, you can educate them, which is highly annoying, but you know, nobody wants to go in and say, okay, I've got this disorder, can you help me? And then them say, I don't know about it myself. Okay, great. But you can educate them, you can send them to websites, you can you know, tell them about this webinar, whatever it is. You can empower yourself by passing on the knowledge to them, and they can learn with you alongside you. So there's that, but there's also being mindful of, you want someone that is going to take into account your race, your ethnicity, your gender, your sexuality, and just the fact that skin and hair and bodies mean different things in different cultures. There's going to be a whole subjective experience of how skin and hair is judged, how it, for example, in African culture, your hair is referred to as your crown and glory. In my culture, in Sikh culture, we're not supposed to cut our hair. In, you know, British culture, if we look at marketing and advertising, or just, you know, Maybelline adverts or L'Oreal adverts, we are worth it. You know, skin and hair mean different things. And so we want to look at the whole picture. We want to look at all of ourselves, all parts of ourselves, not just the BFRB, because we've seen that it impacts all parts of ourselves. So it's important to address all parts of ourselves. So I guess that brings me to the end of the presentation, and we can go to the slide with various websites, and we're going to hear from Lucy and Natasha. I just want to say thank you again, OCD Action, for giving us a chance to give back to the community, to educate, to empower. I hope someone has taken something away from this. Lucy and Tash are amazing people. I want to thank them for coming out of their comfort zone and being vulnerable and sharing parts of themselves, which is really hard to do. We're all affected by BFRBs. None of us are, you know, like experts or whatever, but we just try to educate so that you guys don't feel so alone. So thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Pav. That was I learned so much from listening to you, and I think so many people will have learned such a lot, and I hope everybody, I think all the links that you've popped on the slides there, we'll be able to share in the chat if anybody wants to join the conference or to learn a little bit more about your website at BFRB UK and Ireland. So thank you so much. And I think the importance of the key message that nobody is alone is so important. So thank you ever so much. And as Pav was saying, we're now welcoming Lucy to come and speak to us. So Lucy, if you're happy to pop your camera on, and I don't know if you've got any slides, but if you have, I'm sure we'll share them now. From what I've heard about Lucy, she is an amazing comedian and artist, and she uses her art as part of a way to kind of manage some of her experience with BFRBs. Is that right, Lucy? And is that kind of maybe part of what she's going to share with us this evening? I haven't had the privilege of hearing Lucy speak about her personal experience before, so I think I would just encourage everybody to really lean in and listen. I think it really matters how we listen when people share their lived experience, and I think it matters even when we're on Zoom. So I think if we all lean in, give Lucy a huge round of applause, I think that will make a difference. And Lucy, thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
Thank you for having me. I've got quite a few notes that I've got down here. I don't have any slides, but I do have some notes. So if I'm looking down, it's because I don't want to miss anything out. Yeah, I'm Pavitt asked me to speak today. I met Pavitt some years ago now at the support group for BFRBs, which I started attending perhaps in my late 30s. I can't quite remember the time frame, but in terms of my background to do with I'm 46, which is important because it kind of tracks the timeline of when I kind of discovered all these things were actually conditions. I have dermatillomania, also have OCD and body dysmorphic disorder. So around about the age of 13 is when my dermatillomania started. Started entirely, I was going to say properly, but around the time of puberty, but also around the time that my skin actually did have quite a lot of like flaws. It was breaking out quite a lot hormonally. So that, I believe, was the trigger for my dermatillomania kind of taking hold. Previously, I was kind of having OCD behaviors, like touching things a certain amount of times, moving objects, kind of pure obsessive thoughts and things. But I think when my skin started to break out with puberty is when the skin picking really started. My experience with that would be very kind of immersed, zoned out, hour-long kind of picking sessions where every single pore or any perceived flaw I would squeeze or pick or scrape, very much to the kind of detriment of my skin. People tend to, there is a kind of like tendency to try and get whatever is in out. There's a kind of perceived kind of flaw that, or something that is within the skin that has to come out. It actually leaves more damage than you have to start with. Very much get into a zone where you don't even see your skin as skin so much. It becomes more like a canvas that you're kind of working your way through. Every kind of bump or pore will get kind of in this kind of until it's set. I think to so that was my worst period during the teenage years, I think, because I felt very isolated. I would be doing that for hours. I lived with my mother and my sister, but my sister was very much not around. But I had a very erratic childhood, and I was a very anxious child anyway, and quite an emotionally absent mother, and quite kind of she was very triggered by my picking. So if she'd seen that I'd been picking or that I was upset about that, then she would kind of take it on as being something that she would own as her emotion and kind of make me feel bad for that. So it was I very much learned that the picking was something that I needed to hide. I mean, I was doing this solitary, it's a solitary activity. It was for me at the time. So that's when it started to kind of have a lot of feelings about guilt and shame about picking, hiding it. If people were noticing it, that kind of exacerbated it. So I would be doing that throughout my teenage years. I saw various people for treatment for my skin, but not for treatment for the behaviours around my skin. And that continued on and off. I mean, with fluctuating kind of skin being a problem or not being a problem, until I was about 25 when I read an article in The Guardian, I think it was, about body dysmorphia. At that point, I'd never heard of it, but it rang a lot of bells for me, and I kind of really identified with the profile. I went to see Dr. David Veal, who was the expert at the time in BDD at the Priory. And at that point, and I think this follows on with the discovering that dermatillomania is an actual condition, was the recognition. It's very much, as Pavitt previously said, thinking that you're the only person that has these behaviours and you can't control it, and it's something that you're failing in. And to carry on with what Pavitt was saying, I think very much you're kind of surrounded by this bombardment of skin, like you have to have perfect skin, etc., etc. And as soon as you kind of deviate from that, it's very much a sense of kind of not being good enough. I look down at my notes, but so after I met with David Veal about my BDD, I had a series of CBT sessions at the Maudsley. That was around my skin. It was around the feelings around my skin, I believe, rather than the behaviour around my skin, because at that point I hadn't come across the term dermatillomania at all. I think I came across the term dermatillomania when I was in my late 30s, which is when I found the support group that Pavitt and Natasha is very heavily involved in. And at that point, it was a revelation, because you're suddenly kind of being made aware of kind of terminology that people are using around dermatillomania, trichotillomania. I don't pull my hair, but and all these things have kind of like built up to this level of knowledge about a condition that I previously didn't know was a condition. And also having people that you can just share that like ups and downs with. To continue with the support group, what I've found most helpful is all of that, but I've also been trying to, someone wrote something in the comments earlier that we can go back to, but I think a lot of people in the support group on the Facebook forum, etc., will write comments and it'll be kind of moments of distress. So I'm very much trying to share moments of positive results and behaviours as well. Kind of remind myself that it's kind of a flow. And as Pavitt said, you know, there's going to, sometimes you think you can go cold turkey and you have a really extended period of time where you haven't picked at all. And you feel very proud of yourself. And then if you fall off the wagon, so to speak, you can kind of really berate yourself. And I think it's very much learning, as Pavitt said, to kind of be a bit easier on yourself. In terms of the impact it's had, I think the behaviors, the kind of repetitive behaviors, aside from my skin picking, the repetitive behaviors that have supported the picking and then kind of tried to support the healing from the picking are all this kind of like multi-dimensional layered practice, I suppose. So you've got the skin picking, which can be this zoning out, picking for hours, leaving quite a lot of damage to the skin. Then there'll be behaviors around healing and buying and sourcing products that will help to heal. And then that'll be a cycle of the actual skin healing. There's also kind of barriers that Pavitt's talked about before. So things that I have tried have been barriers, like wearing gloves when I think I'm going to pick, sticking areas of the skin where I do pick heavily with plasters. I've had, since I was 13, so a good 30-something years, many different types of therapy, CBT, hypnotherapy, something called rapid transformational therapy, which includes hypnotherapy, routines where I have a structure around my kind of bedtime routine. I pick mostly when I'm in bed these days. I mean, as a teenager, I would sit with a mirror and pick for hours and hours and hours. I can't remember when I last did that. So in terms of behaviors, things really can kind of, you can really adjust your behavior after kind of many years of kind of putting in place kind of distraction techniques. I definitely don't have magnifying mirrors in my house. I know myself now to such an extent that if I will kind of look in a magnifying mirror or squeeze one thing from my face, that I could be there like 3 hours later in a state of distress. So that's something that's really, I've become, it's kind of like, I wouldn't even think of doing it now, and it's not a concern to me because I've after so many years kind of banned myself from that. On the flip side of that, I think my relationship with mirrors has been quite kind of interesting over the years. I have a tendency to not be able to look in mirrors like all of me at once, so it has to be in small sections. Kind of catching sight of yourself in reflections of windows and things like that will have a kind of traumatized, like a kind of post-traumatic, I think, because it's not that I'm seeing necessarily what I used to see when I was younger, which was significant damage to my skin, but it's so ingrained in me that this is the practice that I have. Alongside that, I think angling your body away from people in certain situations and setting lights, strip lighting is a no for me. I know that if I go into a bathroom or I I'm on holiday and I go into the bathroom there, and the lighting is such that it's going to be showing up way more flaws than that you would have with the naked eye, then I would definitely have I would do something with the lighting, basically. So I'm at a stage with my skin picking where I feel like I'm really starting to reap the benefits of all the different barriers that I've put in place, all the therapies that I've had, all the feelings of my self-worth, and the kind of sense that I'm inherently flawed, all the work that I've done around that. And it's really starting to get to the point now where I'm actually seeing really positive change in my behaviours. I'm not pick free, and I don't think I ever will be. I pick since I no longer pick my face necessarily, I pick my body. I used to pick my body quite heavily over the past few years. I definitely have. And around this skin around my nails. So they're my two areas. But I'm as pick free as I've ever been currently, and I'm really celebrating that. Some of the negative behaviors that come around with this is like the slide that Pavitt showed. I'm a swimmer. I do a lot of swimming. I'm kind of in the pool 3-4 times a week. I've always looked for swimming costumes that covered up as much skin as possible. And more recently, I've been kind of pushing myself and challenging myself to wear swimming costumes that I would never wear before, that shows parts of my back that I don't kind of have a very healthy relationship with. I'm really just kind of extending that each time. So each time I've been going to the pool over the last few months, I've been kind of, first time I'm wearing a swimming costume that exposes parts of my skin that I don't like, quite aware of it, and I'm angling myself away from people if I know people at the pool. I'm kind of slowly changing my behavior around that, and it's having quite an amazing impact, actually, because I've started to really realize that a lot of my feelings around my skin are my feelings around my skin, and kind of an idea and a sense of what my skin looks like rather than reality. So I've kind of jumped all over the place, but yeah, I'd like it to be a kind of positive message, because I do really believe that you can really use a lot of the things that Pavitt was talking about to firstly get on top of things, actually then change behaviors over the long term. I think in terms of what would have helped me when I was younger was finding out sooner that this was a disorder. That immediately changed my relationship with how I felt about myself. Having a support group. I would say if you're a parent of children that you think have a BFRB, having a kind of understanding around it to start with would have been really beneficial to me. And also not kind of, I think the just stop, so many people have told me in my life to just stop, like parents, partners, etc., has never really benefited me, because as Pavitt said, it's really something that you can't just stop through willpower alone. But I think patience, I mean, it can be really testing at times, but patience for yourself as well. Just going to check whether I've said everything I wanted to. But in terms of relating to stuff that Pavitt has said, I definitely have a lot of anxiety and did so growing up, and definitely catastrophize, and I'm definitely a perfectionist. So linking it to what you were saying about artwork, I do very, very refined illustrations that in a way echo how I am with my skin in a way. But whilst I'm drawing, I can't pick. So there's certain behaviors and there's certain activities that you can't pick whilst you're doing them. So drawing for me is one of them. Swimming is for one. In terms of the comedy, that's quite a new thing that I've been doing, and I think I was thinking earlier how it's quite interesting that I can stand up in front of a room full of people and do stand up and not feel so exposed as I would do in a kind of intimate environment with my skin being exposed. So it's kind of just it interests me how, to that extent, how significant the feelings around the guilt around picking can be. Yeah, I think that is, yeah, I think that's everything that I've got in my notes. So
Thank you, Lucy. I think, or I believe that I would be speaking on behalf of everybody listening, although that's maybe a big claim ever to speak on behalf of everybody, but just to thank you for your like huge generosity there, like you was, and your openness, because you were saying how much being part of a support group had been really important, and I would agree. I think like sharing stories and hearing from each other can make such a difference. But I think often hearing from somebody can really help somebody feel like they can reach out for support. And I think you have just generously offered that opportunity to the 100 or so people listening. So thank you so much. And I think you did really bring hope in what you were saying. So a huge thank you. And I think if people have questions, you are happy to stay for the Q&A. Is that right?
yeah,
To share a bit more.
Oh,
Wonderful.
could I just add, sorry,
Yeah, of course.
Just there was one thing that I wanted to say around what Pavitt was saying about kind of sharing information. I think very much I'm trying to kind of use that position where you have a more of an understanding of, to kind of really, there are certain things that are difficult, I think, like for people with trichotillomania, like going to hairdressers, etc. For dermatillomania, I think it's to do with anything to do with like body treatments and massage, chiropractor, anything to do with the body. I'm actively kind of trying to talk to practitioners about what it is that I have actively, in order that I imagine that they would see that quite frequently and not know what they were looking at. So yeah.
And that's something that you've been working on and finding helpful, and also in terms of educating people has been
because
useful.
I think I probably would have avoided things like going to have a massage, but I push myself to do that, and in a way I kind of would like to get to the point where I don't feel like I need to explain the kind of marks and stuff. Where I am at the moment, I find it quite helpful in order to be able to relax and kind of enjoy the treatment, if it's a relaxing enjoyment of a treatment, to kind of say to the person before, or even before you meet them, like in an email, I've got this condition, it's not a contagious skin disease, like I might feel quite self-conscious about it. And in general, every single person that I've done that with, and there's probably been about 10 to 15 people, have been nothing but supportive.
That's really powerful advice. Thank you. Tash, would you like to pop on your camera and come and join Lucy?
Hello there.
Hi. So this is Natasha, or Tash, I think she's is often known to most people as, has worked with OCD Action, and were you a founder or an activist with BFRB UK and Ireland?
I definitely wasn't a founder. That's
okay.
But I joined later on, and there's a group of us that's really trying to do the best that we can.
Fab. And so heavily involved. Natasha's also involved with our EDI panel at OCD Action, and is an amazing activist. So we are really, really privileged to have Tash share her story with us, and I'm going to hand over. And so, you know, as we did for Lucy, please lean in, give her a huge round of applause, and listen well. It makes such a huge difference. Tash, you're so welcome.
Oh my God, I've never heard such a nice introduction. I could cry. Thank you very much. It was absolutely wonderful to hear everyone else's lived experience and stories, and such a wonderful explanation of what BFRBs are. And just to add to that, to jump straight in, first of all, thank you very much for having me. And my BFRB started when I was a tween, like a teenage person, like going in, I guess, from being a child to a teenager. I started picking up my legs. I think it was around the age that I was like, I'm a woman now, I've got to shave my legs, even though I do not have to shave my legs. But I was enjoying the, you know, change of who I was as a person at that time, and not feeling obliged to do it per se. And I would get ingrown hairs, and I couldn't handle them being there and didn't understand why. And so it would cause me to continuously pick at the ingrown hairs in my legs, and I just couldn't stop doing it. And it was bizarre to feel completely out of control of yourself in your mind, thinking that you want to do something, but you actually don't. And I used to hide my legs all the time and put makeup on them. And it was quite young that I felt that kind of shame. And just to note, if I'm giving you side eye, I'm not. It's because I'm looking at also my notes, which are to the side of me. What else happened was, when I was an early teen, I started picking up my face, but not a lot. It was a little bit here and there, but it would be extreme. If I saw a imperfection on my face, I would dig right in there, to the point that at school trips I'd have to plug my face holes with tissue and then put makeup over it in order for it to be flat, because I would have big indents in my skin. And what then occurred was, in between that, my kind of, again, mid-teens, I was really becoming obsessive about my hair. I would start off by cutting my hair, then I would pull hair from my scalp and eat it. I think that's called trichophagia. I was at a long period of school, was the only non-white child there. And so my hair was a novelty to other children who didn't quite understand my hair being different. And it affected me in a way that I didn't realize then, but do now, where I thought my hair was different, and then I was different, and that I needed to do something about it, even though I don't, obviously. But it would cause me to pull out my hair and cut my hair. And my hair relationship, I kind of developed a body dysmorphia around my hair. Not kind of, I did. And so it caused me to overly straighten my hair and wear wigs and do all sorts of things that I felt like I had to do in order to fit in. So that definitely resulted in trichotillomania. I don't know how else to say it. That definitely very much resulted in that. So that's my early teens to then becoming my late teens. I think I felt a lot of pressure of being a perfectionist in college. I wasn't doing so well in lessons as I used to, just because life, I guess, you're with other people who are just naturally going to surpass you at things. But because of my inner perfectionist, I don't think I could handle that anxiety very well. And I really started to pick at my skin then, in addition to the trichotillomania. So I would create large wounds on my face. I would create large wounds on my arms. I would go into school with my clothes kind of sticking into me, and it was difficult to hide. I was late to school a lot. In my early teens, when I was picking at my face here and there, I would also be late trying to cover it up. I would say the worst of my BFRBs was definitely my late teens to early 20s, when you're under so much pressure to look a certain way as it is, and also be seen pretty much every day at school. The worst of my BFRBs, I pulled out all the hair from my scalp at least 5 times. I think I said it in sport groups before that I picked my nose down to the bone, like I could see the bone in my nose, and I was picking for about 8 and pulling my hair out, both like for 8 hours a day, I would say, and picking and pulling every single day. There was a lot of shame obviously involved in that, because I really, obviously we all know this, couldn't stop. And it was bizarre to me. I couldn't understand why I would do something that made me feel such a way. And yet it seemed to me obviously not true, but at the time, I must love this. Why do I keep doing it? And it became this absolute shame, both physically and emotionally, that then obviously fueled me to do it more, because when I felt that emotion, it caused me to want to numb it and then continue the cycle on and on. My BFRBs, I would say, are very much linked to OCD. I have just right OCD, and my hair pulling was very much linked to symmetry. If I pulled out hair from one side, I would then have to pull out hair from another side, and then have to keep doing that simultaneously, continuously. And because OCD is very much doubt, I would then doubt if I pulled out my hair equally, and it would just keep going and keep going until I had patches of my hair missing because I wasn't sure if it was equal or not. With contamination, my contamination OCD, which is also a big thing I have, is external. I'm not scared of getting sick. I just feel an unbelievably intense pain when things touch me, my skin and my hair. I can feel it through my clothes as well, but it's very painful. It's emotional pain if things touch me. And if nothing is perfectly clean that touches my skin, the pain won't go away until it's clean again. And so I believe that this OCD evolved after my BFRBs became controlling over my life, because my OCD before that was about food and about going to the toilet, and not necessarily about my hair and my skin. It very much surrounded that. I mentioned just right perfectionism, and very much so, we all know this story. I would pull out a hair that didn't feel right, and any imperfection I saw on my skin, I would then have to get rid of it. It would be seen as something that must go, even though looking at other people, I would never think that. I also would reopen wounds and scars because I believe they weren't healing perfectly. They needed to heal a certain way, and that very much fits into the body dysmorphic aspect that Lucy mentioned, which I also have. I would focus on the perfectionism aspect as well. I would look at my phone and be like, I must stop pulling and picking forever once it reaches this hour. I'm sure other people have done this because I've heard people say it in groups before. It would be 1 p.m. and it'd be 1 p.m. on the dot, and now I've stopped. And then obviously it would continue, and then I'd be like, next hour, and it would create this vicious cycle of continuing black and white thinking of it's all or nothing. I must stop entirely or I will continue as I am. The body dysmorphia very much fueled my BFRBs through the aftermath of it, of me looking at myself covered in wounds and without hair. But even when my wounds healed and my hair grew back, the body dysmorphia would then cause me to relapse because I was just never happy. It didn't matter if I was with BFRBs or without BFRBs. I just didn't like my appearance, so I would look for anything. And so enough, oh, my thumb's in the way, enough dooming and glooming. I will now go into a journey of continuous recovery. I would say I realised I couldn't hide anymore, because hiding is a massive aspect of BFRBs, as we all know. When I realised I couldn't continue university, I was not able to attend lectures, seminars, or generally leave my room. I wouldn't be able to eat because there was a communal kitchen. And so unless I had food stored in my room, I would just not eat because I couldn't be seen. It really affected my studies as well. I went from being quite a good student to getting U's because I wasn't able to revise my exams. I couldn't attend my exams. And this is before going to university. So I actually ended up doing a course that I wasn't prepared for and going to university that I wasn't prepared for. And so it reached a point that I attended counselling at university, but unfortunately didn't help. They told me that I just have to accept it. I know that they probably weren't intending to get to that point, but it's just the miseducation of BFRBs in general. And so that my sister very much helped me to realise that it's not working. I need to interrupt my studies, so I did. When I came back home, I got counselling. I was told that I was depressed. And it really shocked me because I thought depression was continual sadness, not emptiness. And I felt nothing within myself. And that was a massive revelation to me because I was so in denial about having anything going on, even though the things going on isn't shameful in itself. I'm very much a person who's like, I'm fine. I'm sure lots of us watching are like this. I'm okay. And so it was a shock to realize that something was happening to me. My family did notice that I was depressed. They were very aware that I was kind of a walking ghost. And unfortunately, counselling didn't help then either. It was I was told that I had too much going on and they couldn't help me, which is sad, but they may not have been lying. I honestly don't know. Again, I don't think that they had bad intentions. It was just a miseducation, miscommunication at that time. I wasn't sitting there as the person I am now, so who knows? They can only go by what you say, and I may not have said everything. It's probably a two-way street, but this is just my story. I'm not saying that everyone who's had bad experiences with counsellors, it's a two-way story. It's very much situational. I also, yes, before leaving uni, I signed up to do an art foundation when I came back for a year, which I'm laughing about because I should have spent that year getting better. I don't know why I thought, yes, me leaving the house is bad, so let me then choose to leave the house for a year. It's very telling about the fact that I, again, was like, I'm fine, it's not a big deal. But funnily enough, because I was at home and I didn't have to prepare food for myself, there was a point where I could hide at home and not have to be seen all the time. And it wasn't as bad. And I was able to finish the art foundation, even though it was difficult. And it resulted in me in actually changing my degrees. I left, instead of doing a history degree, I then changed to do an animation degree. And I, instead of interrupting my studies, left university and went to another one, which I didn't think I was allowed to do, but it was one of the best things I ever did. At this new uni, I loved the course because I absolutely adore drawing. I have no idea why I did a course in history. I did like history as well, but drawing and animation is my passion. I think I felt that I couldn't do drawing as a degree because I loved it so much, and jobs you have to hate. I think that's a very immature way of thinking about it, but I definitely did for some unknown reason. But I managed to gain, despite not being able to leave the house, absolutely amazing friends who, one of my friends, I was a robot, and when I couldn't leave the house, they would just put me on call and carry the phone around so everyone could talk to me. And it enabled me to continue relationships with people. And then I became friends with people and was able to live with them in a house. And it was absolutely amazing for me to show myself, my true self, to them when we were all living in a house together, because I was wearing makeup constantly this entire time. And then I showed my face without makeup on, and I was expecting them to really like gag in my appearance, and I have no idea why. And they were just completely so nonchalant about it. And it was a complete anticlimax, and they loved me for me. And that really shocked me in a way that I was just not expecting. It was quite different to how my parents reacted. And again, I'm not blaming my parents per se, but my parents were very much, as I'm sure lots of people watching know, is just stop. Why can't you stop doing it? And trying to impose themselves and trying to help, which doesn't work, unfortunately, because it aids in the pressure of getting well, and that pressure then turns into you doing it more. But my friends not caring about it is what really helped me just be me and took the pressure away, and then helped in itself of not having such a bad relationship with my BFRBs. It really aided in the shame, and being vulnerable like that was something that I hardly ever did. While I was at uni again the second time, I tried to get OCD and BDD specialist care. I was just slowly moving up the tiers from tier 1 to tier 2 to tier 3. And unfortunately, my BFRBs were kind of dismissed as body dysmorphia. And so that didn't help. I was going there for OCD as well. Unfortunately, it just didn't work out. Again, it could be miscommunication, I'm not sure. There was a lot of things going on. I was medicated during that time, even though I actually didn't want to be. But unfortunately, medication, when I was on it, that's the second time on a high dosage, and medication just unfortunately didn't work for me. But it doesn't mean it can't work for other people. So it's very much a personal journey with that. But it reached a point for me that I would become on, it was suggested that I take antipsychotics, which really affected my body dysmorphia and contamination and appearance and things like that. And it became, I just had to step away from it because it was actually making my BFRBs, my OCD worse. But in that time, the best thing that ever happened to me was joining the BFRB community. COVID happened, and obviously that sucks. But because everything was online, it meant that when I couldn't physically go to groups before, which I'm sure a lot of us can't do, I was able to visit them virtually. And so you didn't have to have your camera on all the time. But seeing other people with bandanas on, with open wounds, just happily looking into the camera and being seen and making friends encouraged me to do the same. It was literally the best thing I've ever done in my life. And I didn't even mean to find it. I joined a webinar just like this for habit aware, which is about keen bracelets which kind of vibrate if you pull out your hair. It helps with subconscious BFRBs quite a lot. And I clicked a link that someone put in there saying, oh, there's a community room for TLC, come and join it. And on the other side of that were literal lifelong friends. I'm still friends to this day with people from 4 or 5 years ago from that. There would be every week this amazing like hangout that would go on, and everyone would just be laughing and joking, not even just necessarily talking about BFRBs. And then after that, I was invited to join like as an attendee, or rather a group member, BFRB U&I or BFRB UK and Ireland. And just hearing people talk in that support group format of people crying together and hugging each other virtually and talking about everything that I've ever wanted to say and ever wanted to hear, and other people were saying it to me. And it just felt, I didn't have to say a word. You felt so seen, and it was just absolutely wonderful. And I could talk to them about this all day. I can't recommend support groups enough. They are just something that's wonderful. And it changed my life, and it changed how I viewed myself. It really helped to lessen the shame. I managed to graduate university during COVID because I was able to actually attend for once virtually and online. And it took a very long time not attending, interrupting studies, retaking years. But without the pressure of school, and I was finally free of that, I really did actually what I should have done when I did my art foundation, thought, okay, I really need to focus on trying to get myself better, because it wasn't just the BFRBs, it was the OCD, it was the BDD. And it reached a point that it was me or them, because it had affected my life so much that it pushed me to the end. And that really was a wake-up call that I needed. And I began to I began to really think about how my state of mind was going to be, because when I even had a small relapse, I would be back at square one, and that's how I knew it was me or them. I would start scratching or start picking a tiny thing. A couple of days later, it would be a humongous wound, nearly reaching bones again. And I think any moment that you don't do a BFRB, whether it be right now from you watching this, whether it be while you pick up a cup of tea and you drink it with both of your hands, whether it be just kind of when you've got your hands behind your back watching a film, any second that you're not doing a BFRB, it proves that you can be without it even for that second. And that was enough for me to really push me into understanding what I can do about this. And it's not because I feel like I had to do something about it because of the shame. It was because I wanted to discover who I was, if that sounds very cliche enough. And I began journaling and just getting out everything that I held in, because I would hold in my emotions and they would come out through BFRBs. And I tried to meditate, despite it being very difficult, because obviously I would pick and pull. I then began to dance and just move my body and get all the emotions out that way, because I likely have ADHD as well, and that was absolutely amazing. Anything I could do to not hold the emotions in. And the first journal I ever did, which I filled out with all my emotions, I had actually stopped pulling out my hair for the longest time I'd ever did, because I would do it every day, but here and there, little speckles, I would stop doing it for a week or so. But I also stopped picking my skin for the first time in my life. And it really proved to me that it could be done. And when I say the first time in life, I mean like just for a day. And if I could stop doing it for a day, I really thought it was impossible. I couldn't believe it. And I would also draw out my feelings when I didn't know what to say. I learned to take pulling and picking one day at a time, instead of always looking at the future. I wasn't going, woohoo, I've stopped pulling my hair, it's now forever. It was, okay, this is now. What's today looking like? And I would find my body moving my hands up and being like, okay, don't need to do that. And I think the thing that really helped me stop picking my skin, actually, and I'll say this slowly if anyone wants to listen to it, is an audiobook, or rather it was on Spotify, someone uploaded it there. But The Easy Way to Stop Smoking by Alan Carr. I know that sounds bizarre, but every time he mentioned smoking, I would supplement it for picking. And it really helped me see picking as something, what it really is. It wasn't something that was helping me. It was something that was causing me not to be who I was. And I'm just talking about my personal relationship with my BFRB, because other people see their picking and pulling as a friend and things like that, but I never did. It was something so ingrained in my OCD and my BDD that it became this monster for me. And so it really helped me see my truth, I guess, of how it really was. And that was the day that I stopped picking. It was the journaling and that book together at the same time. And funnily enough, I stopped picking for one day. The day after that, I relapsed. But because I stopped doing it for one day, it proved to me, oh my God, it's possible. And so the next day after I relapsed, immediately I got back on it and had my second pick-free day. And this isn't about, woohoo, I'm now BFRB free. It was just showing what was possible and changing the way that I thought about recovery. I learned from that to bounce back far quicker from relapses instead of dwelling on them. I learned not to punish, but to learn from my relapses. So I learned to put white gloves on when I went to sleep, despite having OCD, because I had to change the gloves every day, but that wasn't a problem because I would scratch myself and pick and do all sorts when I was in my bed. I also learned to get my clothes out the night before so I wouldn't have to walk past a mirror in the morning to get to my clothes. I also learned to ask my parents very kindly to take all the mirrors down in the house, because my mum collects mirrors and it's not her fault, but I would have to look in mirrors all the time. And they very kindly took all the mirrors down the house, except for one, which I trained myself to look in with a distance, a big barrier of like pillows. And I know with BFRBs, you always try to find a way around it, but I really tried my best not to. And so with my hair pulling, that remained consistent of me not doing it, taking it one day at a time. But unfortunately, that didn't necessarily work with skin picking, because my skin picking was far more ingrained with my BDD. And so the skin picking would fluctuate. But I never thought there was a reason for my BFRBs. I would always be like, what are you talking about? Why is it a symptom? It would annoy me because people would use it as a symptom instead of a cause and not give it its true, it's something that people really suffer from. And I realized that I was using my BFRBs to numb my overwhelming emotions. That came just from life, but for me personally, it was my OCD and BDD. And so whenever I had moments of recovering from my BFRBs, it would cause my emotions from the OCD and the BDD flood back, and I would massively relapse. Another thing I massively learned was that I completely misjudged kindness and compassion. If someone mentioned kindness and compassion to me 3 or 4 years ago, I think I'd be sick. And I think it's because I had absolutely none for myself, and I misjudged them for being enabling. But enabling is you being nice to yourself and telling yourself what to hear. True kindness and compassion is being honest with yourself, but without judgment and without shame. What we often do is go, you shouldn't be doing that. How could you do that? You suck, kind of thing. But if you say this happened because it did, but I love you anyway, it's okay. We can get through this together. And this is how I started talking to myself. And I started realizing the answer to continue on this journey is actually kindness. And it's a massive overturn for me, because I would actively avoid it to see the research and the meat and the bones, and I kind of saw kindness as being something flowery over here, and I don't know why, because I didn't think that of other people. It was just for me. It's a very strange thing that I had to overcome. But kindness and compassion is something that is unbelievable, that you see it in the support groups, and that's, I think, what's there. It's just so much love in a room. So much love we have to give because we hide it from ourselves so much because we think we don't deserve it, and we do. Dancing every day, I mentioned before, really helps get out my feelings, my emotions. And I'm not talking about ballet dancing. I'm talking about literally just flailing yourself around the room and really like shaking everything out. That is my medicine. I am not joking. That is something that I would choose to dance over sleep. And I'm not saying to necessarily do sleep is great, but for me, it really helps to get my emotions out when I don't know what's going on, because I know it's very difficult to journal about emotions and feelings if you don't know what's happening. And at the moment, dancing has actually overtaken journaling for me. I'm going back into journaling now, but dancing is like my core. Where I stand now, and I've just got where I'm currently at and then some advice and then I'm done, is at the moment where I stand, I am 3 years pull-free from my hair, which I never ever thought would be possible, because I've had BFRBs for 15. How old am I? I'm 28 now, but soon to be 29, and I started all this when I was like 12. And I never thought that I would ever be pull-free for longer than a month. And that really changed how I see BFRBs. It's not about being free of them. It's more about how you see recovery for yourself. I'm working on understanding my picking, which has massively reduced as well. It would take up, like I said, 8 hours of my day. Now it's I can go my cycle for recovery and relapse, because this is how I see BFRBs. It's kind of like you go through them, then you go through a recovery time, then you go through them, then you go through recovery time. That cycle could be in an hour of you stopping for 10 minutes and continuing. That cycle, some people, can be a year of continuing and not. And I've realized that I now scratch in lieu of me pulling out my hair. But it's really, really become less of a problem in my life, which is insane. I once you give these things an inch, they'll take a mile. So I'm really working on my skin picking because I know it's bubbling below the surface. I can feel it. If I just pick a tiny bit, within a couple of days, I'll be reaching bones again, and I'm very aware of that. I currently volunteer for BFRB U&I, and I reached BFRB UK and Ireland through the conference, and it was amazing. The TLC's virtual conference and just being around loads of people was insane. Volunteering for BFRB UK and Ireland is also amazing. Like going from attending the support groups to hosting the support groups is wonderful. It's just amazing. The groups feel like a warm hug. It's just great to be in the same room as all these people and to just see the love. I don't know how else to say it. I wouldn't have such amazing friends if I didn't change universities. I wouldn't have done the career that I did if I obviously didn't change universities. I wouldn't be part of this amazing community. It's not me saying BFRBs are amazing, but it's the fact that you can still push yourself to say yes to things instead of saying no to everything. I'm trying to have a better view of myself instead of shaming myself for relapsing and realizing that it takes a long time to heal. And the fact that we can undo that in a short space of time is heartbreaking. But by having a better view of yourself, you can bounce back quicker. You can create your own reality. I'm trying to learn to trust my body to heal, to not intervene, and to accept that I don't need to be perfect. I can learn to be less of a people pleaser. So the final part, sorry for my thumb once more, is advice. And this is, if I was watching a webinar, I'd be like, yes, get on with it. Tell me the advice. And so what I've learned through just going through this kind of journey of recovery that no one ever asked for is join a support group if you can. You don't even have to have your camera on. You don't have to have your mic on. People join our support groups. The majority of people do turn the cameras and mics on, but people don't. And we accept them nonetheless. And if you can join the BFRB community, there is so much love waiting for you. It may seem scary, but it's a loving family. We felt ashamed for so long, and to just have real friends and groups and becoming that kind of family that we feel like we didn't have growing up is just, I have no words. It is absolutely outstanding. I would say that a lot of people hearing this, I've heard very rarely, it's rare to hear, but some people say that they've gotten over BFRBs before, and it's a protective mechanism that goes on in the brain where I'm talking about myself here, but I know that other people probably feel this too, of being like, you didn't have it that bad. You can't have had it that badly in order for you to get over it. And it's not that people thinking that, including me, is a bad person. It's because you're trying to protect yourself as being like, why have I not got over BFRBs if this person can? And recovery is possible, but it's just different for everyone. It's there are people who run BFRB U&I who accept themselves as they are because it's not having a massive control over their lives anymore. I believe that's what recovery from BFRBs is. If it doesn't control you in your life anymore, whether you continue to do it or whether you stop completely, that is recovery for me. You can be free entirely or partially, but it's everyone accepts in the community whatever recovery is for you. And I feel like that is a very beautiful thing. If you learn to accept yourself in whatever form, that's very important. I feel like even just on the journey that you're at now, if you're able to, I was going to say respect yourself, which is also a word, accept and respect yourself, no matter where you are in recovering, it helps you immensely. It's very difficult to understand, but it helps you immensely. And that's where the community comes in, because we're there ready to give you a big hug. Get out your emotions however you can. If you can get out your emotions, it's not held in anymore. And I promise you, it will massively aid in you getting out your emotions with your body, of pulling out your hair and picking out your skin. And I felt that shouting when I was going, ah, when I was in a pulling episode, stopped me from doing it immediately. And dancing helps me stop doing it immediately. Talk to your friend, talk to your buddy, move your body, write down your feelings. Acne patches really helped me because it's created a barrier. So did braiding my hair. It created a barrier. It did not stop me from pulling out my hair and picking up my skin, but it made me aware of it. And creating awareness is also very important. The last point, do not put off living until you are BFRB free. You don't have to say yes to everything, but a lot of us get into this cycle where we are not living, we are existing, and we don't get our time back. We put off so much, saying until then, I'll say no to this today because I don't deserve to live until I'm BFRB free. And it's just not true. I promise you that even though my BFRBs have massively lessened, the problems are still there in life. It's just the reason why this began for us in the first place, for a lot of us, is because the problems were already there. And it's you realizing that you're okay now. It's going to be okay. And I'm trying to tell myself that, and be open to support from others, and realize that you can be loved, and the community is ready to love you. I said that was my final point, but just one sentence is that I currently volunteer for BFRB UK and Ireland. We have a conference coming up on 13th, 14th September this year in partnership with the University of Oxford. The only reason why I mention this is I was talking about how amazing it is to be with your community and to be with people. This is an in-person conference at Oxford University, but it's also online if you're not able to make it. The link for registering is in the chat. And also, if you type in BFRB UK and Ireland into Google, or if you type it into any of the socials, you will find us, and information for the links for that is also there. And really, honestly, it is going to be okay. It's going to be okay.
Tash, thank you so much. It was just so powerful, and I felt like you just shared so much of yourself and your journey, and it was wonderful. And there was, I think, different parts of what you said will have resonated with different people, but when you were talking about the power of connection and the power of your friends and the difference that that made, and support groups, and when you were saying about joining the conference and the impact that that could have, I think it's just such a powerful message. And so we've had quite a lot of questions, so we might not be able to answer everybody's question, but what we have done is we have tried to pull together the questions that kind of are most aligned with the content that Pav and Tash and Lucy shared, and like at some points we've kind of put questions together. So one of the questions that came up, and perhaps Pav, you would take this first, and then Lucy and Tash, you might want to add to this, is kind of a two-part question. So it kind of starts with, I'm scared about talking to my GP about a BFRB. How could I approach this? And the second part of the question is it actually possible to get better from a BFRB? Which I think actually came in before Tash spoke, so maybe that's been answered a bit. But Pav, would you like to start with answering that question?
Sure. So I completely get that it's you know, people have feelings of and perhaps potential sort of embarrassment and shame and guilt and all sorts of emotions around going to get help. But I think it's important to know that, you know, GPs in their role are not meant to be judgmental. They're meant to be safe people that you can share with. And I pretty much I've actually given talks to lots of GPs in the UK, actually, and I think they're a lot more educated than what we give them credit for. But also know that, you know, they have heard a lot of things. This may not be the first time that they're hearing you say BFRB or skin picker or hair puller, or whatever it is that you do. I think also recognizing and knowing that you're taking the first step towards your recovery, and that's a brave and courageous thing to do. And I think if you can get over that hurdle, then it would be really beneficial to you. So the pros might outweigh the feelings of shame and guilt a little. Also, I think, you know, if you don't want to say the words, you can give information and knowledge, like, you know, even if it's just like tlc.bfrb.org, or mention an organization, or give information without actually having to say the words. So you can say, I have this thing, and then you can give them a link, or like tell them about a website, or tell them about we used to have TLC Foundation for BFRBs used to have like a leaflet, and that was like an easy way of like handing something over. So you could write like a website down, or you could put some links, you know, and BFRB UK and Ireland, and you can like give that to the GP if that helps. The second part, is it possible to get better? I mean, obviously I'm going to say yes. I have had Trick for like 30 years. I spend probably like less than 1 minute thinking about my hair every day. It doesn't hold me back. I have tackled all parts of myself, looked at and explored as much as I can about myself. I feel like I live a happy, fulfilled life as best as I can. And I have, you know, I'm not pull free, but it doesn't hold me back. And I think also it's about defining what your goals are, what you mean, what you feel getting better looks like. Does that mean, because it's different for everyone, for some people it might be like, okay, I just want to stop. For some people it might be, I want to reduce and minimize. For some people it might be, I want to just have a bit more around acceptance and get on with my life. I'm sick and tired of dealing or thinking about hair and skin. So it really is an invitation or a chance to get curious about yourself and what your definition of recovery is, because that's the most important thing.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Tash or Lucy, do you want to add anything to that, or just say a bit more, Lucy?
Yeah, I'll add to that. In terms of GP, I would say definitely go and mention it, but also have a certain, my personal kind of experience with, I wanted to be referred to a psychodermatologist by my GP. I've now been waiting for 2 years to see someone. So I would say get on waiting lists. If you want to see specific people, say stuff to your GP, talk to your GP. I do actively, but you may not get quick results. I do feel like throughout my life, I've been to the GP for a number of times around my body dysmorphia and my dermatillomania. I probably was on SSRIs on and off for about 25 years. That didn't particularly help. So kind of equip yourself with a lot of knowledge, I would say, but I think it's important that you do go and see your GP for exactly the same reason that Pavitt was saying. It's like educating and having repeat experiences of different people coming to them and I'm on waiting lists for things, but I'm also sometimes in a position to privately fund, so I think it's a little bit of a balancing act.
Yeah, so keeping in touch with your GP and speaking to them, but also being mindful of the time that waiting lists can sometimes take and what the options are.
And I also think I've spent lots of money on lots of things in my life, but to get to the point where I spent money where it's on my mental health and my dermatillomania took quite a lot of me going, well, I think it's difficult because you think, well, I don't know if I'm going to get a result from the amount of money that I'm spending. So I understand the reluctance to kind of do that, but whenever I have made an active decision that I'm going to go and see a specialist or this, that and the other, I've not regretted it, but not everyone's in that position, I know.
Thank you. Tash, is there anything you want to add on that question?
Yes, starting with the GPs, I know that when I was talking, I was very much talking about negative experiences, unfortunately, that I've had with people in healthcare. But that doesn't mean that they're all that way. And in addition to that is, I feel like a lot of people in the health service, you're kind of explaining what a BFRB is to them. So you feel like a lot of the time is taken up by you explaining and educating something that you're expecting someone else to tell you about. It's quite ironic. However, there is 1 in 20 of us that have a BFRB. We think that we're the only ones because we're in hiding. And unfortunately, because we don't want to tell other people about it, GPs aren't then pushed to research it more because they don't know what it is. So the more people you tell GPs what it is, the more they'll be like, what is this BFRB? What's going on? And they'll look into it because they have to, because they have so many people coming to them asking them about it. It's unfortunate that it has to take time in order for that to happen. But hopefully with more of us coming out and more of us seeking help, it will. And in addition to getting better, it's wonderful that we have 3 people here talking about the fact of how BFRBs don't necessarily control their lives anymore. Of course, as a human being, there's always something above us that we look at and we're like, oh, I need to be there. But it's amazing that we've reached a point where we look at ourselves in a different way to how we started our journey, which is recovery in itself in a way. And I think that's a capability for everyone watching this.
Thank you. And that message about the education element of GPs, I think Lucy was saying the same thing. I think that's really important. And just following on from that, one of the other questions that came in was somebody saying that they're seeing their therapist, and their therapist has said that their hair pulling was like very similar to self-harming, but it doesn't feel like that to them. Is that like a common misunderstanding that you kind of come across? So yeah, lots of nods. Who would like to speak first? Pav, do you want to go? And then Tash, you were both nodding very fervent.
You're nodding. Yeah, it's a really common question. So it's BFRBs have never been classified as self-harm, but I think people do for some reason think it is. But I think, you know, the main differences are that people with BFRBs are not intentionally wanting to cause harm to their body. It's more of a compulsion, and it's releases like, you know, a feeling of pleasure, or rather than the intention to hurt, the intention to cause harm. Quite often people with BFRBs, it doesn't hurt, like, you know, when they pull, they'll say it doesn't hurt, or when they pick, it doesn't actually hurt them. But I guess looking from the outside of that, people without BFRBs tend to presume that someone with it's got to hurt, right? Like, you're pulling your hair, it's got to hurt, but it doesn't. And it's not done to cause intentional harm. It's more of a kind of compulsion around it. I don't know if Tash or Lucy want to add anything, but it's never been classified as that.
For me, oh, sorry, I've got my fringe has gone into my eyes, I couldn't see. For me, BFRBs, a lot of people have mentioned, are a self-soothing behavior. For my friend who's discussed self-harm and has gone through that herself, for her own unique experience, it was in order to punish, but also to kind of feel something, which is the complete opposite. We're trying to soothe ourselves and we don't feel anything when we're doing it. It's amazing that we're able to pull out our hair and pick our skin, and in the moment of the trance, you don't feel it, you feel it afterwards. And so it's kind of insane that these two things, which are the complete opposites, are then classed as the same thing. And I believe it's because of the aftermath. You're looking at wounds, which is the same thing, but you're just getting there in different ways. So one is caused by the want of, they're kind of both caused in a want of love. But the other thing that I wanted to mention is the fact that some people with self-harm, my friend was also talking about this, that you're in trouble and you can't say anything, but your body says something in that way, where if people can see the harm, then they can realize, I'm in a bad way. We try and hide it with every aspect of our being. So again, it's kind of the opposites, but coming together. But I'm just talking of self-harm from my one friend's experience, because I definitely don't want to talk on behalf of all of self-harm. That's just what I know from talking to one of my friends.
Thank you both. I think we've definitely got time for at least one more question. So somebody was saying that and actually a couple of you did speak to this. So I'm scared to go to the hairdresser because they're often judgmental about my hair loss. I feel like I need to justify it. Do you have any advice about how to approach this? So Lucy, I suppose you spoke a little bit similarly about like going for appointments and speaking a bit about this. I don't know if you'd like to start, but if not, if anybody else would like to speak to that.
Pavitt, because I don't have much experience with.
Okay, so hairdressers, a bit hit and miss, aren't they? Some of them, I've had personal experience with some of them are just like, I felt worse, but some of them I felt a lot better. So I do know there are some in London that are just trick friendly, if you want to call it, or BFRB friendly. One is called Hair Solved. I don't really have like anything to do with them. I mean, in terms of like, you know, a partnership or anything like that, I've just been there, and I know others that have been there. So they have branches around the UK, and they are just a lovely hair sort of loss type of company that helps people with all types of hair loss. But again, it's kind of, I know it's really, really difficult, and every time we put ourselves out there and share a bit of our story and become vulnerable, we might be met with a closed door. And I unfortunately, that is the way life is, but it doesn't mean that, you know, they're not open doors in other places. And so it's about kind of building on your resilience, building on your strength, building on your courage, your bravery to kind of take the step towards your recovery. And if that means kind of like, again, giving information or going in, handing something to a hairdresser, a clinician, a GP, whoever it is, then if that's the way that you prefer to do it without using words, then that's perfectly acceptable. And you know what? If people are judging you, that means they are judgmental. And if people are looking down on you, then that means that they, again, are judgmental, and that is a reflection on them, not on you. So I know it's really, really hard. Don't take it personally, which is difficult when you already feel guilt and shame. But again, that means that, you know, you kind of want to work on your resilience. You want to work on yourself as a person, in order for you to kind of go and get the help that you need. There's plenty of nice people out there. There's nice GPs, there's nice hairdressers. Yeah, like, I think, you know, I completely get it. I've been there, but I suppose like thinking about the other side, I literally, if I speak to anyone or see anyone or share my story, and if they think, oh my God, that's really weird, whoever they are, and they're like, that's really weird, I'm like, okay, well, you know, like, you think that's weird, maybe you're a bit judgy, and that's okay. You know, that person isn't for me, and that's okay. We're all different, but it's just about kind of picking yourself up, like knowing your strength, and moving on to the next. And you will find people that are receptive. It may take some time, but hang in there, you know.